So now let's talk spoilers for Jurassic World Rebirth. I have my notes app all set up with all kinds of different thoughts that I had about this film that I would really love to talk about. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So first of all, the first thing I say is that the pacing was decent. I talked about that in my spoiler-free review. I do think that the pacing was a lot better in this film, except for one creature in general. Or well, I don't know if you'd even consider it a pacing issue. It's just a screen time issue. But that's the Distortus Rex. Now, I have a few of the same problems that I had with the Giganotosaurus when it comes to the D-Rex, and that's the fact that they kind of like they talk about this animal a specific way when they're marketing the film, but then the film tells something completely different. The Giganotosaurus, it was like it would they hyped it up as being the Joker of sorts, the Joker that just simply wants to watch the world burn. They wanted this to seem like the most evil dinosaur in the whole franchise. Then when the film happened, that's obviously not what we got in the end. It was more so like an actual animal, which yeah, that I mean, I still like that. I think that's cool, but that's not what they hyped up. The D-Rex, something that they really talked about a lot when they were talking about the D-Rex, or not a lot, but they did mention it, is the fact that they wanted you to feel sorry for it. They wanted it to seem like this animal was constantly in pain with the way that it roared, and just the certain sounds that it made. I didn't really get that impression from it. It kind of felt like just another creature that just shows up very briefly, and then, just starts to attack things. Yeah, that's just the kind of impression I got. Like I said, though, it is kind of like a screen time thing, though, because we don't get a lot of Distortus Rex in this. Amazing opening sequence. The film, the tone is set pretty well with the beginning, as of course all of the InGen scientists are working on things. There's a lot of like creatures in vats, like the Mutodon, the two-headed Mutodon, which by the way, the vat actually calls it a hybrid. The Mutodons are hybrids. So for all you people who said that who like said I was wrong when I said that the Mutodons are basically hybrids, there you go. The Mutodons are hybrids. So there. But anyway, we get the Distortus Rex sequence in the beginning where a Snickers wrapper gets caught in like a vent or something and stops the door, and the whole security system shuts down. It's a pretty faulty system if a little wrapper can mess it up like that. Maybe that's how real systems are like. I don't know, but that just kind of seems a little bit goofy to me. Anyway, the whole system falls down and the D-Rex gets out. It, of course, it likely kills quite a few people, and we get that one scene that we've seen in the second trailer where one man is trying to get out and the lady can't let him out, and the acting is great there. I loved the way that the man acted. You can really hear the fear and the sorrow in his voice and see it on his face. Very well done by the actors there. And that's a great start. That start will have you believe, like you'll probably end up thinking that the D-Rex is going to have a big part to play in the film. Not true at all. It's like the D-Rex is not even like built up to, so to speak. It's sort of like something that's just there. Like you don't get any hints to it at the beginning of the film. The characters don't come across a footprint. They don't come across like a carcass or something that's been mutilated, and they're like, "Oh, what did this?" No, it's just something that's just there. It just shows up. So it's a little bit anticlimactic in that part. And the way that they were kind of hyping up the D-Rex, I figured it was going to have a little bit more of a lasting presence, but you definitely don't get that from the actual movie. And because it doesn't have a lot of screen time, they don't really have a lot of time to make it sympathetic. You don't really ever feel sorry that this animal was created. And that's something that I feel like they wanted us to feel when they were talking about this animal in early like interviews and stuff like that. And you never really get that impression that this is an animal you're supposed to feel sorry about. And that's something I wanted. I wanted something that visibly looks like a monster, but actually is treated more so like a sympathetic animal. I thought that was a great route to take, but it's not something that we ever really get to see, or at least not in a clear sort of way. Maybe the sound design, maybe like the way that they roared, like they talked about, maybe they did put a little bit more emphasis in trying to make it seem like it was a painful roar, but I still don't ever get that impression when watching this creature. And that is a bit unfortunate because that is something that I was excited to see with the D-Rex. I was excited to see that little element of it. I mean, maybe we'll be getting sequels to this and then they'll go back to this island and we'll get more time with the D-Rex. But just the way that they kind of hyped it up, it doesn't feel like they ever delivered on that. But aside from that, yes, like I said in my spoiler-free review, it felt like the pacing was a lot better with most of the other cool animal moments. There was a lot more build-up and execution and a payoff to each scene. Like there was a lot of time spent with the Mosasaurus, which I thought was really cool. A decent build up to the Quetzalcoatlus, a great build up to the T Rex. I loved the fact that when we see it, it's sleeping and it's like rolling around and actually acting like an animal. Only goofy part is that when like the raft had been inflated, it covered the T Rex briefly, and then when it fell back down, like a second later, the T Rex is just gone. Like you don't see like a tail walking away or anything. It's just vanished. It's like magic. Kind of took me out of the film a little bit, but it's obviously not a big deal. But I just wish that we saw like a tail or something, like it walking away. Like, it didn't just like it didn't go from just barely waking up to just being completely active right away. But while we're on the topic of the T-Rex, of course, that was the river scene. Unfortunately, it does seem like they practically gave us every single shot in that scene, which I hate when they do that. I didn't watch them all, but of course, people do share them across TikTok, so I caught quick glimpses of them, which is pretty unfortunate. And yeah, you basically do see the whole scene through the clips that they uploaded on YouTube and whatnot. But it is still very cool. It was great to see the T-Rex swim and kind of like, mess up the raft and try to get to the raft and everything. One of my favorite things is when it first notices these people swimming away, it doesn't just start roaring right away. It just kind of looks at them. It's just kind of like it feels like a curious animal at first. So it's like looking at them and then it starts moving towards them just slowly. It's not like in a mad dash or anything. So it kind of felt like it was in almost like in an animalistic way, just kind of like playing with them like a cat would with a mouse or something like that, because it did already have its meal. There was that dead Parasaurolophus off to the side, and it was, obviously it was already eating that, probably taking a huge nap because it just ate that. So you kind of get the impression that it wasn't just attacking them for food, but rather probably just for entertainment. Like it was just acting like an animal. So it was just kind of, it was just, I'm just going to mess with these things right here. And I liked that. I thought that was great. That's a great way to portray these animals. Like the fact that it didn't start roaring until it already like started flipping the raft and was already chasing them. That was great. I quite like that. I thought that was a very neat touch. The Dilophosaurus does also appear in that scene. Unfortunately, it's not a fully grown Dilophosaurus. I'm starting to believe that we have seen a fully grown Dilophosaurus because they just absolutely refuse to put in an 8-foot tall Dilophosaurus. They always put in the small one. So I'm starting to think that's just how big they are in universe. Whatever. Anyway, the story is this. Of course, they have to get DNA from the 3 biggest dinosaurs. They have to get the DNA from the 3 biggest dinosaurs to create more like life-changing medicine and stuff like that. That kind of frustrated me a little bit in a small sort of way. Let me explain why. So they go to recruit Dr. Henry Loomis. They had already the business dude, I can't remember his name, but the guy who's running this whole show, he already recruited Zoe Bennett. She decided to go because of money, like around $10 million. And then they're going to officially recruit Dr. Henry Loomis. I don't know if we can call him a doctor because of how he says something, but okay. And then they're like talking to him about it, and they explain that they need DNA from the 3 largest dinosaurs. He says that, and then he says the first dinosaur we need is the Mosasaurus. He literally calls the Mosasaurus a dinosaur. That's that's setting us back. I'm telling you. And he doesn't correct anybody either. All I want in these films is for somebody to call like a mosasaur or a Quetzalcoatlus a dinosaur and then just to immediately get corrected. How hard is it to just write a single line of dialogue? Like I was hoping that like Zoe or the business dude would call like the Mosasaurus and the Quetzalcoatlus a dinosaur, and then Loomis would just immediately correct them. Be the nerd in the room, be the classic nerd character. He'd be like, "Well, actually, they're technically not dinosaurs." Just a quick little thing for the audience, because I know that a lot of my audience, they completely understand that these films are not fact. I know that there's a good portion of people out there who do. But there's a huge, huge portion of people who do take the information that they hear as fact. And they're going to hear the paleontologist character, the scientist character, call a mosasaur a dinosaur, and then they're going to think that it's a dinosaur. Same goes for the Quetzalcoatlus. Speaking of the Quetzalcoatlus, it does have a terrible design here, but what really frustrates me is that they have a skeleton in the museum, and the skeleton is of the Rebirth design. So here's the little logic that we have here. The Rebirth Island, as they explain in the movie, and as everybody likes to say in the comment sections of stuff, is filled with like all of the failures, like the misfits essentially. These are the ones that like there was a lot of like genetic tampering, there was a lot of like hybridization, a lot of things that were happening on this island and they just kind of let them here instead of, putting them down for cost related reasons. That means that the Quetzalcoatlus that are present here, these were all failure Quetzalcoatlus, that's a fine explanation. Yes, that's why they look so terrible compared to the Dominion design. But why do they have the terrible one in the museum? Obviously, I think I know why. It's probably so that the audience will see that skeleton and they'll automatically be able to connect the dots that this is something that they're going after. But wha if that's like the failure Quetzalcoatlus, why is it in a museum? Especially if it's like a Quetzalcoatlus that most other people wouldn't really know about because really nobody goes to this island. That's just that's a little bit frustrating to me. I wish there was like a better Quetzalcoatlus design. Even more so, I wish that like there was a moment where Loomis is looking at the Quetzalcoatlus and says, "Wow, they butchered that animal. No wonder they rejected it," or something like that. Be like had a moment where he kind of feels sorry for the way that these animals look, and really emphasizing the fact that yes, these are the genetic mess ups, so to speak. Like these are all like the trials for the Jurassic World. By the way, this island is not for the original Jurassic Park. It is for Jurassic World, as in the 2015 movie. So it's a fairly recent park. In fact, they created the D-Rex, I believe. What I think it was said about 5 years after the original Jurassic World was created, like the original park. So that or the second park, so to speak, not the original, because the original would be Jurassic Park, but the Jurassic World. So yeah, this is a fairly recent island. It is a brand new island entirely. It's not Isla Sorna. It is a completely new island. I can't remember the exact name right now, but it is a brand new island. But yeah, I don't know. That was just something that was a little bit annoying to me. And it's just like it's things like that that could be kind of fixed with just a single line of dialogue. Like if they want to really bring home the idea that this island is the outlier and that things are not normal when it comes to the dinosaurs, why don't you have your dinosaur expert character convey that information? He could be the one that he through his eyes, that's how he views these things. Like he acknowledges the fact that the Quetzalcoatlus that doesn't look quite like a Quetzalcoatlus, or he acknowledges the fact that the Mosasaurus is oversized or something like I don't know. Other things like that. I don't know. I'll go ahead and stop getting off of that. There are a lot of things I did like about this film. I did really like the Titanosaurus moment. I loved that when you go up close to the Titanosaur leg, there's like these small amounts of feathers. That's so cool. I love that. Of course, we don't have evidence for feathers on sauropod dinosaurs, much less titanosaurs, but it's a cool little detail that certainly does make sense. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they did have some sort of feathering like that, especially the sparse hair-like feathers that would be difficult to preserve in the fossil record. So that was really cool. I love the Titanosaur sequence in general. I thought the CGI was great. The music was phenomenal. It was like the classic John Williams music. And it really got like your heart pumping. And it was very cool to hear. Like I said, the T-Rex scene was really cool. The Spinosaurus, they were fine. We didn't get too much of them. They were mostly aquatic in this. We didn't really get too much of them on land, which was a bit unfortunate. The Mosasaurus, it was pretty fine. The Mutodons were okay. They were hybrids. I already confirmed that. They were hybrids. They were pretty all right. A lot of them they're they were a lot of them they were just kind of like there to be like the placeholder for velociraptors, which yes, velociraptor does show up. One of the characters, he's taking a bathroom break and you could see them stalking behind him. I loved that they were doing that. They were very quiet and he didn't know that they were there. They felt like actual predatory animals that were just slowly moving in. That was awesome. And I loved the fact that they did that. But then they do get attacked by a Mutodon and one of them gets flown away because, it was killed by the Mutodon. So that's the extent of the Velociraptor in this movie. It is still in this film. So we still have gone without, like, there's not a single Jurassic Park/World film that doesn't have a Velociraptor in it. So there you go. But the Mutodons kind of fill that role. They are a bit different in the fact that they are larger. They do fly, and they of course they are hybrids, so they have like beaks on their mouths and things like that. Okay, so obviously my thoughts are all over the place right now. So I'm gonna like look at my notes a little bit. I'm gonna give you some quick little things. A Neurognathus, it does appear in this briefly. There might be a shot of them like flying out of the boat in the raft scene. But we do get to see a close up of one. Unfortunate thing about that is that you don't really get any confirmation that that's a little pterosaur because it mostly spends its time on the ground. Uh, Duncan finds it and it's green in coloration. I didn't get a good look at its design, but it does look like a pretty good Neurognathus design. And unfortunately, I think that most people when they see that they're not going to think that it's a little pterosaur. There was like two teenagers, or there was like some two people right next to us that were watching the film, and they were kind of talking a little bit. That's why I thought that they were teenagers. And they kept whispering to each other, and I heard them talking to each other when that showed up, and they were like, "It's a little frog." So I think that people are going to think it's a frog because it kind of did look like a frog. And that's unfortunate because I love a Neurognathus, and I want people to know that that's a little pterosaur that actually did exist. That would have been cool to see a little bit more of it, but you can't see too much of everything. Oh, Compsognathus was in this. They have this. I assume that they're Compsognathus. So we don't really get confirmation, but they have like a really cool kind of red coloration. That was awesome. The Quetzalcoatlus, as I said, they were fine. Their sequence was fine. I just don't like their design, and I don't like the fact that that specific design has its skeleton in the museum. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I don't know. I feel like they could have emphasized the fact that this island was truly filled with failures if they had like, the Rebirth, or sorry, the Dominion skeleton in there. I did like the family. Those characters were quite great. The boyfriend was certainly annoying at first, but he grew as a character, and I didn't really have any issues with him towards the end. I really liked the father. I thought the father was awesome. He was a great character. And the two girls, they were also really great. I did like Dolores, the Aquilops. I did like that little ceratopsian. Of course, her design's quite a bit different from the real life ceratopsian. I believe that Aquilops has like more of a reduced frill, if at all. It might not even have a frill. But I still did like her. I thought that she was a cool little dinosaur companion to have. There was a Dunkleosteus appearance in this. Before we even get to the island where Duncan is located, there's like a bunch of like fishing boats and stuff. One of the fishing boats dunked they emptied their fish, and a bunch of fish came out, but the head of a Dunkleosteus came out, which means that there's Dunkleosteus canonically swimming through the waters. That's sick. It would have been cool to see more of Dunkleosteus. And in fact, I was kind of talking to this about this with my wife. It'd have been kind of cool if like Dunkleosteus, like if they were with the Mosasaur instead of the Spinosaurs, since the Spinosaurs didn't really leave the water, so it was kind of, I mean, they really emphasized the fact that they were Spinosaurs, but it would have been cool to see Dunkleosteus here and maybe just use the Spinosaurus at another sequence. But I thought that was cool, and its head looked good too, which it's we only have the head of Dunkleosteus, so that kind of works out. And then Titanoboa. Well, okay, I say Titanoboa, but there's like this sort of tentacle, or it's a snake moving through the water. We never get confirmation of what exactly it is. My wife and I are just calling it a Titanoboa. We don't know if that's what it is, but yeah, there's something that shows up in the water. Also, there's like this amphibian thing that we see twice. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly interesting. So yeah, all around, it is a fun movie to watch. As I kind of ranted for a little bit, I do have some problems with the film, and I'll probably make more content talking about specific things that I thought about the movie. I will be seeing it again, maybe tomorrow, if not sometime in the near future, but I do plan on seeing it more than once. And after that, of course, I'll be talking about it a little bit more. But for now, those are my general thoughts about the film, my general spoiler thoughts. I do certainly have some frustrations, mostly with like the Quetzalcoatlus, the naming of like all of these guys just being named dinosaurs. Like he called them like a sea dinosaur, he called them the flying dinosaur. It's frustrating. And of course, I have issues with the D-Rex, which is pretty unfortunate because I was kind of looking forward to seeing the D-Rex. It was something that was kind of growing on me, but we didn't really get too much of it. But yeah, those are my basic spoiler-filled thoughts of this film. Be sure to let me know what you guys saw or thought if you saw it. It's late, because we had to see a pretty late showing. So I'm going to go to bed. I'll edit this tomorrow. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Have an awesome day.